Welcome to Shatiwa Makeba's wealthy home of love and eternity, where we come together every second Friday to indulge in sexual wisdom. As we know, it is a serious situation and love has been imprisoned. Imprisoned, I would say we could probably look down deep underneath us. It must be a dungeon somewhere close to a stinky sewage. And as we look at love, stuck there wondering how to set it free, we might be looking at how to break through the bars or find the key. And then we realize that there are shackles. Shackles around the ankles and shackles around the wrists. We realize that there are shackles around the waist and shackles around the neck. So, it makes sense to start with those shackles. And tonight we will look at the shackle of suffocation. And this suffocation happens due to a very simple triangulation. Behind me, some kind of with a little bit of imagination, upside down triangle. And towards the bottom, we've got the divine masculine energy, and towards the top, we've got the divine feminine energy. As we can see, the divine masculine is one. The divine feminine has been split into two. And she has been split into the sexy and the proper. I've used quite mild words, meaning the good wife material and the prostitute maybe, or the promiscuous one. So this intense separation between how a woman ought to be and what a bad woman is like. And that split of the divine feminine causes quite a strong energy that pulls us down into deep, deep darkness. Now, as we know, to be pulled down into deep darkness, this is not a problem as such, as long as we can ascend back into light. So it is the balance. It is going into darkness to bring back into light. So thanks to white supremacy and its best tool, patriarchy, this triangle and intense spiralation into downwards energies, into the most lowest vibrations, have been set in place and actually represent the norm in our mainstream living. Might seem paradox, but actually it is a very hypocritical system. And it is a system that by no way will allow us to experience love in its freedom form, in its purest, life-giving, ascending, God-seeing, orgasmic-like state that we were meant to experience it in. So it certainly gives us a starting point, but from here we need to create a second triangle. But before I get to the second triangle, let me get back to the first triangle. So, a lot of tension and confusion is created. Divine masculine obviously needs to choose the proper wife, and yet fights his desires of wanting to be with the bad behaving woman at certain times. So this pull between the good wife and the bad woman is very strong, and it causes a great separation, and it causes also, because one is usually married into a system of monogamy in mainstream, although we've been offered all these beautiful different relation systems, we are sort of focusing in patriarchy on monogamy, and also polygamy has got its place. But what really rips this apart is that we are signing ourselves into a system we cannot uphold. So shame, guilt, jealousy, envy, all of these feelings, they are the ones that help the spiral to descend into darkness. we are looking at a very two-dimensional situation here. So let me try and get this, a little bit of imagination. I found this stone close to Meru in Kenya, and it resembles a pyramid. So when we come to the entire idea of the triangle coming down, yes, one has the 3 points, and at the same time one has the 4th point, and the whole thing gets a 3-dimensional notion. And when we imagine the triangle that is pointing down, or the pyramid that is pointing down, and the pyramid that is going to be pointing upwards, when they merge perfectly, a star comes into being. And this is the star we are looking for. This is the star we are. We know we are that star. So, at the moment, I don't know if you can see this little fluorite, which also looks very similar to a pyramid. At the moment, you could say this is the size of our upward pointing triangle. And you can see that there's very little balance, and it's very difficult to create a beautiful star out of these two. So we are really in that process now of appreciating the beautiful heavy pyramid and triangle pointing downwards, recognizing all of these intense energies, really recognizing them and feeling them, so we may transcend them and grow our beautiful green fluorite heart love energy, the ascension energy, that godlike energy we are all desiring and craving when we roll into fetus position at night, feeling lonely. Or when we roll into fetus position at night and we might even have somebody to hold us from behind, and we still feel lonely. So the loneliness also not only again in being single or being in relation, but that there's a heavy loneliness happening within relation. And that is again the desire of wanting to bring this upward triangle into being, because one is so heavily pulled downwards by this illusional separation we have created for ourselves. We are not the one or the other. The divine masculine does not need to choose between the one or the other. I mean, simply the tension held between the good housewife and the so-called prostitute. They want to be each other. It is putting us literally into that position of not being happy where we are. And don't we know that? That we always want to be where we are not? Because after all, my husband is going to the prostitute at night. She is the one better in bed, and I am the one lacking. I am not worthy enough. And after all, my client is going back to his wife. He's not going to stay with me, so I am lacking. I am not good enough. I am looking for the normal life with the baby and the husband. So both the prostitute and the housewife, deep, deep envy of each other. And there we can see how all of these emotions are constantly being upheld. And that this triangle can be seen in so many ways. We can even extend it beyond the actual female-male energy and go into the whole race which we want to put in here, where we separate white from black, and how the white is supposed to behave in one way and the black is supposed to be behaving in one way. And during the apartheid days, if you were a white man, you're supposed to have a white woman. And yet, for some reason, you would be sleeping with the domestic worker. So, a bunch of tensions come up, and a lot of abuse comes up. And also the tension of sexual abuse, and even sexual child abuse. So, a lot of themes can be discussed in this downward dragging triangle. And I'm just touching on all of them very, very briefly. Now, besides identifying this triangle, we are obviously also interested in somehow building the little green fluorite crystals strong enough that we eventually have got the same size upward pointing triangle as downward pointing triangle or pyramid. So we may be that shining star that we are. A very basic and straightforward would obviously be, if the shackle is by the neck, and the suffocation of the triangulation. If you even look, there is a triangle, and this is a very sensitive spot. So to massage the point of suffocation by triangulation, and to really feel into one's fragility and vulnerability, and also to really feel how little we dream, because we are suffocated. We cannot even dream of what love looks like free. So to always give this point attention just for a few minutes, because it's been carrying that shackle as well. Just as love is carrying it, we are carrying it. And another way of truly coming into the pyramid of ascension, the pyramid of the rise, is obviously the reunion, the unification. So with that comes the basic understanding that in our 3D world we are often taught in linear patterns. Things are linear, and that has got its purpose. But in the overall picture of things, things are not linear, and they are more circular and more spirally in nature. So what this means, in our 3D way of thinking, you've got the one extreme here and the one extreme here. So there's a great separation between the two. They are very different. The black supremacist and the white supremacist. The prostitute and the proper wife. Extremely different. So far from each other. And yet what really is funny with the extreme left and the extreme right is that in actual fact, due to the holistic truth of things, they become the same. They meet at the same point in a circular motion. If you take the map and make it flat, the world map, obviously the point most right and most left, or most west and most east, will seem like it's the furthest apart. But once you wrap it back around the globe, those two parts actually are the closest. So while one is so desperately fighting the other, one is actually fighting oneself, and the one actually becomes the other, and things become very scary in some way. But once one realizes this and truly grasps it in one's being, it can transcend. Then all of a sudden, to stand in the one stance or the other stance and creating all this tension, it can simply transcend, and we can let go. We need to let go so that we can come together. So forgiveness, to understand that this system is in place for a reason. We need the downward pointing triangle, the shame, the jealousy, the guilt, all the actions, all the perpetrative actions we had, all the victim-like actions we had. We needed that. That is okay. And now we're coming to the understanding that we are not as different as our so-called enemy, and that we actually might be very alike. And then to come to the understanding that what we have separated within ourselves needs to be unified. So there is not simply the proper housewife, or there is not simply the sexy, lusty prostitute. They both hold one of the other inside of them. It is the yin-yang. And to fully appreciate that and fully hold the being as a whole being and not as a separated being. So, I think I'm going to finish all of this first lesson of how to break loose the shackles of love, or is it already the second one? A completely different topic. I want to tell you a story. In my ignorance, I want to tell you a story of a heritage I've never met, from a country I've never been to, from a spiritual idea I can barely smell from very far. And yet I feel somehow this needs to be shared. So for the upward going triangle, let us take the same triangle, and we're going to point it upwards and just forget the words on the side. And find all the opposite words to them. That is also a lovely thing, is to really feel into the shame and feeling into the opposite of shame, which is freedom. Most of the opposites of these feelings is absolute freedom and love. I mean, that's what it boils down to. It can come with a lot of other beautiful words, but freedom and love will negate all of them. So in our upward pointing pyramid, when we see this as the top, and then we've got 1, 2, 3, what is going to change is that the fourth point will become the divine masculine. So that actually the top point here will represent the divine masculine, and then the 3 base points will represent the divine feminine. Now the 3 base point is again a separation. Yes, we have got Oba, Oya, and Oshun, and I don't know if you're going to even see that writing on there. Okay, so Oba, Oya, and Oshun are 3 Orishas from the Yoruba heritage, tradition, culture, which has also been carried over to the ocean, so you will find it in the Caribbean, in Cuba, and in other places. So there are many Orishas, and I will just speak about 4, just to bring the story of the upward going triangle a bit more into being. So the separation has gone even further, where we are the 3-headed goddess, and this is seen in many cultures again, that you find the mother, the crone, and the maiden. And we might see them in separate stages, because some of us are in our 80s, some of us are in our 40s, and some of us are in our 20s. But yet, the ones who are in their 20s can hold the wisdom of a crone, and the ones who are in their 70s can hold the sexual delight of a maiden. So again, bringing these 3 aspects together. Now, Oba, Oya, and Oshun are 3 separate Orishas. And what happens is, Oba is the main wife of another Orisha called Shango. And he eventually cheats or commits adultery or moves on to Oya, and then he moves on, he cheats on Oya by going to Oshun. So this is also a very big topic in our mainstream world, is this way of how we are cheating each other and causing a lot of hurt and a lot of downward spiraling energy again. And we look at religion or stories or spiritual concepts often to also justify this, and we can say, oh well, if the gods are doing it, obviously we are going to be doing it. Now Oba is known for her crone energy. She's the all-seeing elder mother or grandmother and wise. And Oya is known for the courage and the fierceness and the storm. She's the warrioress, market woman, business woman. She can work with raise the dead soldiers, or the dead all over to work for her as soldiers. So she really has that mother energy, that bear mother energy. And then Oshun is just sweetness and gold and honey and nectar and water and flowers and lovely, lovely, sexy, oh goodness, yes. So that is Oshun. And that is the maiden energy, the innocence that holds a tremendous power. That's why the constant crave for the virgin also. Not understanding that we are always going to be carrying that virgin energy within us, as we always carry the crone energy within us, as we always carry the mother energy within us, as the divine female. And the divine masculine, in the upward going triangle, will spiral upwards, because he understands that if he chooses to follow monogamy, he can choose one person who's going to actually encapsulate all of these three entities, and to fully respect the divine feminine for carrying these three energies throughout her life. Maybe at different strengths, one energy or the other, but yet she does hold all three. And that one can tap into all three, because the divine masculine does require all three energies at different times. So there's an interesting story which I think needs to be just relooked now. So what happens is, during this entire triangulation of Shango wanting to be with Oya and with Oshun, and Oba is obviously not feeling good about this, and she's very jealous also, and so all of those negative energies come into play. And so I don't know if this is now Oya and Oshun, one of them plans in some way that Oba gets the message that the only way she can keep Shango completely to herself is if she cuts off her ears and makes some kind of a dish with it and serves it to her husband. And this is a guarantee formula for success. He will never leave her again. Well, obviously that went terribly wrong, and when Shango came home one night late after his visits to Oshun or Oya, and he finds his true wife sitting there with no ears and blood running down, and he sees this horrible food he should eat, he runs away forever. So we can clearly see the complete distraught mess here of Oba being completely deserted with no ears and just blood running down. Oya, the warrioress, in any case, she's also in fierce storm and uproar because she's eventually been deserted for Oshun. Oshun has got no connection to the elder mother, to the mother, because she's also just being resented by these two forces for her youth and her beauty. It's an absolute sad story. And stories are stories, but they hold truth, and it is up to our interpretation of what truth we can draw from the story. So why is Oba cutting her ears? It's about listening. It's about begging us to start listening to a different version of the story. What if Oba, Oya, Oshun, the three-headed goddess, was but one beautiful woman all along? And what if Shango was the most dedicated, loyal, loving, faithful husband you could have ever imagined? And what if the two of them were the most delightful twin flames, bringing fire, warmth, water, coolness, earth, stability, air, freshness, and so much more into life, into existence? What if the story was different? What if all was unified? What if the separation was an illusion and the story is falsely told? And now we all believe that Oba is sitting somewhere deserted, abandoned, when in actual fact they are dancing together right now. And they are sad because we cannot see their union. So we will close today by really giving space and deep, deep love to the downward pointing triangle pyramid. We do not reject it, because it'll just double the shame upon shame upon shame. We really hold it, like you really hold that entire part with understanding. And we also celebrate and we look forward to all this energy which has already started. I mean, once the crystal has started, it's easy, and it's going to grow into the most beautiful upward triangle you can imagine. Thank you for listening.